Family Secrets, Stories from the History of Texas Wesleyan. This is a project that was begun by an oral history class taught in the spring of 2016 at Texas Wesleyan. And this semester also coincided with the 125th anniversary of Texas Wesleyan. And so what we decided to do as a class is interview people who had had significant impact with the university, whether as students or alumni or even employees at the university. In all, the class collected 18 oral histories. Each of these was about an hour in duration. And the narrators range from alumni stretching back to the 1960s, all the way to the 1990s, to faculty who have been at the institution since the 1960s and 70s, as well as longtime staff and administrators. When the interviews were completed, the students transcribed the interviews, and one of the ways of analysis is we ran it through NVivo, which is a data analysis program. And this gave us a sense of word frequency. For example, the words that were used the most in 18 interviews, remember 18 interviews of about an hour in duration, faculty, the word faculty was used 180 times. The word friend was used, or friend or friends was used 115 times. Education, the same number. Family, interestingly enough, was used over 100 times. Words related to personal or individual was used 106 times. And the word fun in 18 interviews was used a total of 72 times. So it gives you a sense of some of the themes that we encountered. What we intend to do in this short video is tell some of the stories that we heard from some of these 18 interviews. One of the major themes of the interviews was education and how education, in fact, shapes experience. And our first story has to do with that.
Alan Henderson is the provost here at the university, but, and this is hard to imagine, he used to hate school. He was preoccupied with his paper route, and besides, he struggled with reading. Alan was much more concerned with understanding why his customers were so cheap than with anything that might happen in a book. Then he met Miss Boss. Miss Boss was Alan's 8th grade teacher, and she gave him 3 books. The 3 books that changed everything. She turned his worry about stingy customers into a lasting love for psychology. With those 3 books, she turned a slacker into a scholar. The Art of Loving, Skinner's Behaviorism, and a book about the Holocaust. 3 books that seem unrelated, but reading these 3 books and discussing them with an invested teacher, Alan felt the initial sparks of what would become a lifelong passion for education. Alan speaks of his first true teacher with a tear in his eye. For Alan Henderson, Miss Boss was the right teacher at the right time with the right 3 books.
We all know that a lot of education that takes place at the university happens outside of the classroom. And oftentimes it's in those places that we learn character and life-shaping lessons. Our next story has to do with that.
Bill White felt that the most important lesson he learned at Texas Wesleyan was that you should always rectify your mistakes. Bill went to high school in Fort Worth at Pascal High School and only played on the basketball team for 1 year, his senior year. When the basketball coach offered him a scholarship to play for Texas Wesleyan College, Bill took advantage of this opportunity to get involved in more than just athletics. "I want things to be different," he said. He made many lifelong friends at Texas Wesleyan. Things got tough for Bill when he was kicked off the basketball team his junior year. He and the coach got a little crossways, and in the end, Bill explained to the coach, "I'm tired of this shit." Bill knew that he made a mistake once the words left his mouth, but he did not know how to fix it. Shortly after the exchange of words between Bill and his coach, a faculty member came to his room and assured him that he would be able to finish his school year at Texas Wesleyan. The next year, Bill was voted back onto the team by his teammates. That was the only way that the coach was going to let him play. Bill remembers Texas Wesleyan College for allowing him to rectify his mistakes. Bill is now in the Texas Wesleyan Hall of Fame for basketball. He is on the school's all-time scoring list despite missing more than 15 games.
So the college experience can provide both practical and character education. However, when many look back on it, it's one of the best times of their lives. The friendship, the memories, the fun. Our next story has to do with that.
Scott Cannon shared a story about a celebrity event that ruffled a bunch of feathers and caused a lot of controversy. University trustees, parents, and other members in the audience caused a fuss after a comedy act that was organized by the school. Wesleyan used to host a celebrity series event. Semi-famous celebrities would come in and perform in the Fine Arts Auditorium. One celebrity that came to perform was a well-known comedian, Lily Tomlin. Scott recalls, as often happens on Rosedale, there's going to be police sirens flying down the street. So sure enough, a police siren goes flying down the street, and she said, "God, they're coming to get me, and I haven't even said fuck yet." Despite the fact that many were offended and complained about the comedy act, Tomlin was just being funny.
Given its small size and the fact that for much of its history, Texas Wesleyan was known as TWC, or Teeny Weeny College, students, faculty, and staff often remember their experience at Texas Wesleyan in terms that are associated with the word family.
David Floyd, an alumni, recalls his time in the theater department at Wesleyan. In the interview, he said, "We had so much fun, and we were a close group. I get to go with friends of mine and brag about the fact that I was in the very worst production that Wesleyan ever did. We did a show called Bill and the Widowmaker. It was terrible, it was horrible, and it was silly. When you look back and say that the best thing about the show was the costumes, it was a bad show. We took the show to Oktoberfest, and by the time we hit the third act, there was a lot of alcohol consumed. It was a show that was all over the place. So the curtain opened the third act. I'm clearing my throat, and the audience is clearing their throat. I'm saying something, and the audience is repeating me. They are mocking him. And then all of a sudden, here comes half-empty cups of beer being chunked at us on stage. We were just like, let's get this over with." For David Floyd, this was an experience that toughened him up.
Dr. Salih is a political science professor here at Texas Wesleyan University. After speaking with him, it became apparent that he paid his fair share of dues to the university. Dr. Salih came to Texas Wesleyan in search of a job in 1968. What he got in return was a loving, family-like environment. This environment was made possible by the relationships he formed with everyone on campus. These relationships ranged from student level up to administration. In the years that the school ran into financial instability, these relationships helped Dr. Salih to willingly sacrifice his own salary so that the school could continue to function. In closing, I ask the audience, everyone in the audience, how much do you love Texas Wesleyan? If it came down to sink or swim, would you be willing to sacrifice your own salary? Dr. Salih thinks the current faculty would not.
And when we presented at University College Day, the faculty that were in attendance also did not think so. Well, for many, their experience at Texas Wesleyan was multidimensional. As a student and an employee, or as a student and an active alum, it's never just one thing at Texas Wesleyan. Our next couple of stories talk about this multidimensional nature of Texas Wesleyan.
Gina Phillips' mother always pushed her to go to college, but she never really saw the point. She tried twice and failed twice. Nothing would change her mind until her mother died. When she started at Wesleyan in the fall of 1993, Gina was braced for a struggle. 3 kids, a husband, a job, and still raw from her mother's death. She slacked as a student before, and she didn't want to fail again. This was the semester that Susie Espinosa died. Susie was the daughter of Miriam Espinosa, Gina's English professor. Her death was sudden and tragic, but Dr. Espinosa kept teaching. Gina was drawn to Dr. Espinosa by their shared loss, but she was also inspired by her success and her professor's perseverance. Today, Gina is the Director of Development at Texas Wesleyan. Other schools could not provide the level of success that she found here. They did not have Dr. Espinosa, a professor whose tragedy showed Gina that she could overcome her own. As Gina says, I believe in what they do because what they did for me.
Melissa Wallace was born for the stage. She performed here at Texas Wesleyan when she was only 8 years old. That night, watching from the wings as Joy Garrett sang and danced her way through the stripper, Melissa Wallace was in awe of the spectacle, the spotlight, the glittering costumes, and thus she made two decisions. When the time came to go to college, she would come back to Texas Wesleyan, and when she was all grown up, she would be a stripper. Melissa's career goals changed, but she kept her vow to return to Wesleyan. She found a home in the theater department, lifelong friends, and a mentor who would guide her as a student and as a performer. Mason Johnson was a small man who was bigger than life, a sharp dresser, and most importantly, a teacher who watched over her like family. Melissa was not a good student, and she was rarely seen in class or around campus unless it was on the stage. She was a performer, and that meant spending a lot of time away from Wesleyan, fulfilling her duties as Miss Fort Worth or touring with Bob Hope. But she always came back to take center stage in Cabaret and Mac and Mabel, to be enrolled by Mason Johnson for the graduation she would miss, to get her teaching certificate when she decided to stop performing, to serve as president of the Alumni Association, and to check in on the students who came here with her help. When Melissa Wallace was 8 years old, she made a promise to come back to Texas Wesleyan. She kept that promise, and all these years later, she's keeping it still.
Several of the individuals that we interviewed were faculty at Texas Wesleyan, and faculty experiences make up an important part of the story of the university.
Ronnie started college as an accounting major. His father was very excited for him and began calling him the CPA accountant of the family. During his 4th year of college, Ronnie decided to change majors from accounting to philosophy. His father thought he was crazy for giving up a promising future in accounting for a not so lucrative career in philosophy. One time during a trip to Ireland, Ronnie decided to do some research into his family history. He found some documents that said his ancestors had been banished from Ireland during the potato famine revolt and wound up moving to the New World. The documents also told them that most of his ancestors died at the turn of the century in great poverty. He sent these documents to his father and wrote a note at the bottom saying, "Father, you will be happy to know that I am following in our ancestors' footsteps, and that as a professor of philosophy, I too will most likely die in great poverty."
Meet Dr. Jane Moore, professor of math. No, math lover. The woman has a serious passion for math. Jane just celebrated 50 years here at Wesleyan, but back in the early 70s, she was one of 2 in the department when Wesleyan hired a new male math professor. A mix-up in the dean's office, and the new professor's contract landed on Jane's desk. She opened it and was shocked to discover that the new guy was making double her own salary. After 5 years of loyal service, this Johnny-come-lately was starting at twice her salary. From shock to fury, but what could she do? She told no one. There was nobody to tell. Instead, Jane nursed a deep resentment, a resentment that boiled below the surface for the next 25 years. She was pissed off. But when she decided to keep her silence, she thought that it was over. 20 years later, Jane was forced to revisit the injustice when a former student confessed to switching the contracts. On purpose? Not even Jane knows that for sure. But instead of reigniting her rage, that confession was the one thing she needed to finally let it go.
Most jobs are just that, jobs. But from the maintenance crew to the president of the university, Wesleyan puts a high value on its staff. The next few stories have to do with staff at the university.
Mr. Charles Martin has been with Texas Wesleyan University for over 20 years. After serving in the military and working a few jobs, he landed a position here at the university as a classroom and media technologist. Since being here, he's played many roles, from recording online classes to helping professors get things in order so things run smoothly in the classroom. Charles has seen many changes here at the university, from computer labs with no internet access to networking and Wi-Fi. He now sees the internet speeds on the campus increasing in the future. Mr. Charles Martin loves his job and has many fond memories here, but looks forward to his retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. And one memory worth mentioning is when he first got hired here, Mr. Martin remembers his wife and son visiting the campus, who was around 6 or 7 at the time. While they were walking to the basement, Professor Stan Rummel was downstairs smoking a cigarette. His son ran up to him and said, "Don't you know that smoking's bad for you?" and quickly ran away. The innocence of children.
Working in financial aid and admissions, Ren Ziller participated in the dog and pony show to recruit new students. She then noticed the retention rate was dropping because once the semester's freshmen were enrolled, they started the recruitment process again. She said it herself, there was no one here that really gave a damn if they stayed in college, so these students would leave. She was able to pitch an idea for a position that would handle students throughout their whole time in college. She started many retention programs, including RAM Camp, which is still an event here on campus for incoming freshmen. She was humble about her contributions she has made here at Texas Wesleyan, but without her, at least one of these programs would not be running here today.
Doug Spellman. In May of 1983, Doug Spellman began working in the maintenance department at Texas Wesleyan after serving in Vietnam and being a police officer. He took a job that would pay less because he saw how he could give his children a tuition-free education. He took a job, unfortunately, a year and a half later, Doug and others in maintenance lost all their benefits. The college was going through a financial hardship, so maintenance and other departments were contracted out. Everyone in the maintenance department became employees of an outside firm called Aramac, or ARA. The benefits they had received at Texas Wesleyan were now gone, even after receiving assurances that those benefits would not be lost. Faculty such as Margaret Patowski, Jesse Soul, Joe Brown, and others even fought for their colleagues in maintenance. Unfortunately, their cries of injustice fell on deaf ears. But that did not deter Doug. One of his maintenance tasks was to pick up the mail and deliver it to the mailroom and eventually take it to the library. Eventually, after a time, the dean of the library, impressed with Doug's work ethic, offered him a position in the library and even walked the paperwork through all of the channels necessary. This transfer to the library reestablished his tuition-free benefits. Doug's goal for a tuition-free education was achieved by his daughter when she graduated from Texas Wesleyan in 1997. Doug believed that he had received so much more. His Texas Wesleyan co-workers are his family.
At the end of the day, a university is about educating students. Sometimes in trying to help students, the administration and faculty can be at odds. Our next couple of stories have to do with controversies here at the university.
When Patty Alexander came to work at Texas Wesleyan in 1984, she was grateful, excited to have health insurance and free tuition and a chance to make life better for her family. When she accepted the job as secretary to the director of physical education, she knew it for the opportunity it was. But there was something she did not know. She did not know that in taking the job, she was also enlisting, choosing a side in a war familiar to every college campus in the country. us versus them, faculty versus administration. On one side, a cabal of rabble-rousing professors. On the other, a staff resentful of faculty raises. And caught in the middle, Patty Alexander, student and member of staff, uniquely positioned to understand and appreciate both sides of the story. Patty remembers the sting of faculty bias when she was named registrar, achieving the rank of administrator. She remembers the great robing controversy, the fierce objection of staff members robing students for graduation. In that battle, Patty was so sympathetic to the faculty position, so protective of the professor-student relationship, that she refused to robe her own daughter. That is Patty Alexander, a diplomat who rolls with the punches and makes personal sacrifice for the greater good. A champion who believes that service to the students of Texas Wesleyan takes precedence over petty conflict. Before administrators, before faculty, first and always, the student.
Bobby is a guy who has dedicated his life to help the students achieve the dream of playing collegiate golf. He has been at Texas Wesleyan for over 47 years, first as a student, before becoming head coach in 1986. At that time, he had 6 scholarships for golf, and he had raised over $1.5 million, of which $750,000 is an endowment at the university. With this, he was able to recruit the best players and win 3 golf national championships in 1990, 95, and 99. After 1999, things started to change when the administration took away scholarships in order to spread them amongst the other sports, making Texas Wesleyan athletics a jack of all sports and a master of none. Instead of 6 scholarships, he was now down to 2. Coach Cornett let it be known that he was against bringing football to Texas Wesleyan and that the school should concentrate on a few sports and be excellent or known in just those. In his own words, he called this short-sighted.
Oftentimes, the university involves a relationship between faculty and students. Imagine as a student you are having a problem starting a paper or wondering whether to drop a class. In these instances, faculty can often serve as an inspiration, and our last story has to do with inspiration.
The faculty of this university has many figures who are larger than life. One among them is Dr. Linda Carroll. Dr. Carroll knows the heartbeat of her students. She understands when her students are dealing with rough times. In times of crisis, she sets aside her schedules and her lessons plans and helps her students deal with unforeseen tragedies. Even when she finds a student dealing with a personal struggle, she's willing to take the time to encourage that student, relating her own struggles, such as the time Dr. Carroll shared her own story of how she got her doctorate at an unconventional age and almost quit. She literally was to the point of tearing up her dissertation when it came back edited to death, and she had given all she thought she could give. She said, "Had I not pushed on, I wouldn't be where I am. So when you think you're done, I'm here to tell you that you're not." How many people tell you their own failures so that you might push past your own?
So those are some of the family secrets, stories from the history of Texas Wesleyan. Thank you to all of the interviewees who participated in this process, and thank you to the students for working so diligently on this project.